Welcome to Heartistry. Today, we welcome yet another wonderful guest. Let me tell you a little bit more about them before they join us. Today, we welcome Mariam Magsi. Mariam was born and raised in Karachi, Pakistan, and currently lives in Toronto, Canada. Mariam is a multidisciplinary artist, writer, and educator using photography, poetry, performance, and other arts to amplify marginalized voices, challenge norms, and ignite change. Mariam's projects of note include Barda, Jahez Dowry, Daughter of the Tribe, and Dawat Yan Project. Mariam's works have been exhibited and presented at world-renowned galleries such as the Art Gallery of Ontario, MoMA, Pride Photo Amsterdam, and are also globally published in Vogue Italia, Scene Arabia, CNN Arabia, Dawn, She Does the City, and many more. Mariam's pronouns are she, they. And an additional note, Mariam also educates BIPOC seniors from vulnerable groups, and we hope to speak with her about that as well. Please join me in welcoming Mariam Magsi to Heartistry. And welcome to today's guest, Mariam Magsi.
Hello, Farah. How are you? It's so good to see you today.
Oh, I am good and even better, finally getting this opportunity to have this time with you because as we know, it's been a long time coming.
Yes, we've been playing tag for a while, but
Yeah.
it's just that we're so busy and hard to get. But here we are, hunkering down and finally doing this. So I'm
Yeah.
proud of us.
Agreed. And, a little context for our listeners on how we met, which, I think was just, it was exactly the beautiful way that we needed to know. The way we were introduced and got to meet is indicative of, I think, the connection that we feel to one another, which we were connected by, I think I can comfortably say, family, even to you, right? They happen to be, yes,
Absolutely.
blood relatives of mine, but I know they're a family you have known very long. They're my father's cousin, Huri Nurani, and the extended family. You are very close, of course, with their daughter, Maya, who was also on the podcast, I think, in season 1 or 2. And we got introduced when we were both in Karachi. You, of course, originally are from there, but now based in Toronto. I happen to be there from the States, as I often show up in that beautiful country. And we became fast friends. And though we did not get to spend as much time as I would have loved or seen each other since, I think that was in 20, was that 2022, 23?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So it's obviously been a while, but here we are. And I'm excited to revisit many of the conversations we may have started then, but here's so much more from you.
Absolutely. No, you're right. And Huri and Noni have always spoken so highly of you, Farah, and they've always wanted us to connect. And of course, the greatest gift they've given me and this world is our Maya,
Yeah.
whom I love very much. And I loved the episode you did with her. It was actually during the first lockdowns
Yes.
that you both sat down and recorded a wonderful conversation around trauma. And I still remember how that episode and a lot of the other episodes that you were recording during the more difficult parts of the pandemic really helped many of us get through
Oh,
that time because it gave us something to look forward to look, to hold on to, but also an insight into how other people are processing so much challenge, difficulty, and uncertainty. So thank you for creating this platform, inviting such wonderful guests. I've also heard episodes from several friends of mine that I've grown up with in Karachi.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's truly an honor to be here.
Oh, well, it is the gift that keeps on giving to me as well. Well, with that said, Mariam, as you probably are familiar a little bit with how I love to kind of jump into getting to know our guests even better. And I think that that begins with your origin story. And that is, uniquely yours, both in it's what and how much you want to share with us about your personal history, your family history. Eventually, we'll get to the present. But tell us, where were you born, brought up? We've, of course, alluded to that a little bit,
Of
but
course.
you shared some things with me about your family, your lineage, and any of that that you'd love to share.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Farah. So I was born and raised in Karachi, Pakistan, in the Sindh province, and my father is Baloch. So my paternal heritage traces back to a village in Iran called Magas. And we were the people that resided there. And so from that, we became Magasi. And then from that, today, we are Maksi. So Magsi, which is my surname, is actually the clan name.
Amazing. I didn't realize that.
Yes, so we don't take our father's first names. All of the women and girls hold on to the clan name, which I think is very empowering. Um, Given the colonial contexts of how names began to change after marriage. So that's that. And then my mom's side is Punjabi. She was born and raised in Lahore. And I always like to say that all roads go right back to her and my parents, without whom I wouldn't actually be here. And they had a very, very powerful love story that transcended class, ethnicity, creed, caste,
Hmm.
background. And they really fought for their love. And I'm a product of that love story. Um, and my mother actually worked as a flight attendant in Pakistan International Airlines. She was definitely someone who went against the grain, was very empowered, very vocal, very opinionated from quite a young age, and didn't particularly want to accept the script that she was seeing being handed out to others around her.
Mm.
So she left home, and we're talking about, your early 70s at this time. And another very defining factor about her is Farah, she always had a camera with her.
Hmm.
So, to go even further back, there are no visual text-based records of the women in my maternal ancestry. What we do know is that my great grandmother Karmisha wore a burqa
Hmm.
by choice, and she had a very large haveli in Lahore. A haveli is, I guess you could say it's like a mansion or a very, very large
Right.
dwelling. And she ruled over her family with an
Ah.
iron fist. So no one could travel without her permission, not even the men. No one could go get married at whim. No, mobility, access, everything was very, very controlled by her. And there are wonderful stories that have been coming down in our lineage about her. That she had this raised elevation or a takht in the middle of the courtyard,
Hmm.
and she would sit on top of that and smoke her hookah and offer her prayers and eat her meals. And I can picture this sort of area having trees and plants all around her. And she had this bird's eye view of her home and the family
Wow.
ongoings. And so, very, very strong, empowered woman. And after her, we know about my maternal grandmother, Sarfaraz Begum, who was also in pre-partition Lahore. She got married to my grandfather. My
Hmm.
grandfather on the maternal side had close ties to German and British expats and was also a soldier in the British Army. So he didn't like that she chose to cover her face and hair. In fact, he was quite insistent that when she's with him or when she's in the car and they're together and people are looking, that she please remove her veil. And she vehemently refused. So
Okay.
it came to a point where he would then force her to take the back seat in the car because he didn't want to be associated with a woman that was veiled in that way
Wow. Hmm.
to appease to the
Yep.
colonizers, right? And
Yep.
to the
Yep.
colonial lens, which is what he was adopting as well because of the amount of time he was spending around them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I saw my mother and my sister also struggle with their choices around veiling. So, as educated and progressive and elitist some of the circles can be, they can also have the same intolerances that we
Hmm.
often critique, those on the right, for instance, right? And there can be that fascist tendency in our own liberal circles as well. And those are biases that I check and
Sure.
recheck within myself all the time.
Yep.
Who are we still leaving out? who are we still not making space for just because it doesn't align with our values
Right.
or views?
Right.
What choices are we taking away? So I think about liberty and freedom and the hypocrisies around it as well quite a bit because
Mm,
it's formed by experiences that I've witnessed within my family. So coming back to no visual records, no textual records, and I think when the camera came in
mm,
the scene, my mother wouldn't let it go. So
amazing.
all of her travels, all of her experiences in her marriage, pictures of my father's ear, his hands,
Oh,
pictures of
wow.
us frolicking at French Beach. It looked nothing like what it looks like today. It was
Or just beach.
vast expanses of sand. It was clean. There was absolutely no construction in the background. It was just horizon and open views.
Mm,
She's got tons and tons of photographs of all of us. We have drawers and hard drives just filled with her photography, archive after archive. And Farah, she painstakingly collected every single photograph. She's dated them. She left
wow.
notes behind them. Sometimes I'm still finding photographs and albums. When I take them out and turn them around, there's her handwriting.
Mm,
And the reason all this has become even more pertinent today is
mm,
because we lost her in a
yeah.
very untimely fashion at the age of 54, just recently in 2019.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have survived that loss
Mm,
without all of this material that she's left for us.
yeah. And what a gift on so many levels. It's the subject of the photo. It is, when you lose somebody that you feel so deeply connected to. And not I acknowledge that for everybody that may not be their parent, but whomever that might be, to hold something they held, that they wrote, that their eyes saw, it's the layers of just sentimentality that invokes.
Absolutely. And I think my passion for recording
Mm,
life as it's happening, whether it's my living experience or the experiences of people around me, stems from that. I mean, she's even recorded my first vocalizations from 1985, which is when I was born and first started making sounds.
yeah,
And she's recorded that and she's left it on cassette tapes, which I found in her room. So I can hear myself in 1985. I mean, of course, I'm just making goo goo gaga sounds at her.
sure.
And she just keeps saying, I love you, my baby. I love you, my baby. So just to be able to go back there, and I know not everybody has that because partitions,
Yeah.
migrations, displacements, we lose so much along the way. Um, so
Mm,
I hold on to these archives with all my life.
beautiful. Let's go ahead. We'll take our first pause here and we'll continue on. Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh, and today we are speaking with Mariam Magsi and hearing just about, my goodness, the beauty of these gifts. I mean, that family lineage, and we were only talking really, so far about the maternal side. And it's just such a beautiful thing when you can, even if it is a matter of looking back at something, but you can really honor it and acknowledge it and better understand it. Um, and so much of what you've done, and it's telling these stories the way when history is captured in one way or the other, talking about the impact of that and this conversation in the medium in which we are doing it. The hope is that it will motivate somebody to do that, to start. Even, you talk about audio recordings, even doing recordings with elderly parents, hearing their stories, hearing their histories. Aging is a very real thing and it hits people in different ways, but while that memory is still present, and sometimes even when it starts to fade, the long-term memory still might be there. Capturing that as part of your history, the good times, the not good times, whatever it might be, it's invaluable.
Absolutely, Farah. And you said something there also about recording history that I think is very important. I think reclaiming
Yeah.
how our histories are recorded and how our stories are being told now that the tools are in our hands
Mm.
is even more important because we often get this misconstrued perception that women were just, trapped in the four walls.
Yes.
They were subjects to the patriarchy. They didn't have many choices. They lived and died in their homes. But there are examples like my mother who were very defiant, didn't have the support that they needed from their families to leave, but left nonetheless,
Yeah.
chose to marry outside of their little networks and circles, even though they didn't get support through that, and had to face backlash, but did it anyways
Yeah.
and fought patriarchy nail and tooth while also holding on to tradition,
Yes.
while also holding on to culture, whatever culture looked like to them.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
I have all these photographs of my mother as she's traveling through America and UK, but she's always wearing the most beautiful shalwar kameezes in
mm,
every single photo with her long hair just flowing, but she's always wearing shalwar
there you
kameezes.
go. And
I
it's
love that.
beautiful. It is both a reclamation and it's also a rewriting of
Yeah.
a narrative that can sometimes feel like it's already written for you and you just have to follow it,
Yeah.
right? And so then even still when you've lived the way that you've chosen,
Yeah.
somebody will still try to say no, 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 no. Wo nahi hua.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. That no, no,
Indeed.
right?
Indeed. Indeed.
So it's by on some level documenting it. You're like, oh yeah, look, I've got proof.
Exactly.
And you
Exactly.
are also the proof. And I know you have a beautiful family, many siblings. You are one of how many?
So I'm the eldest, or we are five girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I've even gotten to meet at least one of the sisters who is an amazing hairstylist. And I got a chance to have her work her magic on myself and my mother in my last trip to
Oh,
Pakistan. And it was
that makes
like,
me so happy. Yes,
oh,
my youngest sister,
yes.
Anisa, runs a salon of her own in Karachi by the name of Hair by Anisa. And I was so excited when you told me that you're actually going to pay her a little visit. We're very, very proud of her. She's super hardworking, very creative, and she's done quite well for herself. So, yeah,
100%. Oh, it was
power
a
to
joy, and I
her.
can't wait to get back to
Of
her.
course.
Let's
I like to see the five of us as the five fingers on my mom's
Oh,
fist,
I love that.
you know?
I love that. And each finger plays its own role,
Exactly.
Oh, I love that. So, Mariam, you mentioned, okay, so you grew up in Karachi,
Yeah.
and what was that like, the schooling? I mean, you talked about your parents. Tell me a little bit about your own childhood, growing up. What eventually took you to the West, to Toronto? Or was Toronto that very next stop, even?
Right, right, right. So, interestingly, Farah, my story is a little bit different, and I love telling this because it always just throws people off. So, South Asian households, what's the desired path? Doctor, law, engineering, accounting, do something that will make you a lot of money, so that you are stable through your life, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It does come from a place of care. You
Right.
know, at the end of the day, our folks want to see us succeed, and I totally understand that.
Totally.
But in my household, it was the complete opposite. So from a very young age, I was actually saying that I would like to be a doctor. I want to open a hospital for people that are,
Mm.
that face barriers with income, and I want to do medicine. It was a hard, firm no. My mother put paintbrushes and paints all around me, and she said, "You are going to be an artist." And at the time, I was like, what does that even mean? How would a 4-year-old try to figure out what that loaded word means? It's interesting. I got
Mm.
spanked for something. She was a very, very harsh disciplinarian,
Mm.
and her rage was loud.
Mm.
So I got spanked for something, and as soon as my mother left the house, I took all of these black markers, black paint, and I went ham on the white walls. Absolute, like I made squiggles and anger marks, and I just poured out all my rage on these walls. And she came home, and I was, I mean, I was young at the time, but I think she was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Oh,
fantastic because it taught me that through life's difficult moments, there
mm,
are ways we can actually channel our rage, our grief, our depression, whatever it is that we may be feeling, into a creative outlet, whatever
mhm.
that might look like. For you, that may be dance,
Right.
right? For me, that might mean picking up my camera and going on that photo walk, or sitting down with the archives and making a collage, or
Yeah,
using my own body in performance art, for example. So it can look different for different people,
absolutely.
but just to have that from a very young age definitely helped me get through the more difficult and challenging parts of life. And then I attended school there. She had to drag me to art classes, which were very sort of cookie cutter in the sense it was like still life drawings and
Mm,
paintings. Realism was appreciated. Art was mostly relegated to categories of good or bad.
mm,
I had some unpleasant encounters with educators that were sort of hell-bent to just get me out of the arts.
mm.
But then I also had absolutely fantastic mentors and educators that made sure I stayed in the arts.
There you go.
And so to be pushed and pulled in these
Ah,
directions, I'm very, very grateful for their mentorship and their belief in me. I think the role of the educator as someone who now educates and facilitates workshops herself, um, it's not only to help us see or find new information, but I think it's also to help us connect with the tools that will help us get our message across in the most efficient way. That doesn't necessarily have to be a still life painting,
yeah.
right? It can be you wanting to throw and splash paint on that
Yeah.
wall,
Yeah.
right? And it can be unchoreographed dance,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't always have to follow the colonial structures that have been placed by our predecessors. We can chart new paths. And I think that is the mark of a very successful educator, where you
Mm,
can help the student find those tools and find a way to get their message across without actually excluding them altogether,
mm.
right?
I love that.
Or making us believe that it's right or wrong and good or bad.
Mm,
And who set the standards to begin with? Like,
yeah.
can we push back against that, right? Um, So yeah, and then fast forward when it came time to think about university, that time was quite challenging for me.
Mm,
My teenage years were quite troubled, and mental health was also playing a role. And so, of course, there was the question of, do we let her go?
mm,
What do we do? And of course, there was a lot of talk from the external circles and networks, and a lot of people were telling them not to actually let me go.
mm.
But once again, my mother, holding that torch, led
Yeah.
the way, and she was like, "My daughter is going to go, and we are going to support this journey." So I came to Toronto. My entry point was actually Scarborough in 2004.
Okay.
I did my bachelor's in studio art and English literature from University of Toronto, and that was really some of the first times I was engaging with the camera and performance art and abstract art and in a more sort of accepting and free way. Like I remember some of our first assignments were really unique. Draw with your feet,
Hmm.
something I'd never done or
Yeah.
experienced in Karachi. For a performance art assignment, the professor asked us to record ourselves in the bathroom doing our daily tasks like teeth brushing, but to slow it down. So do it all in slow motion. So
Oh,
whether it's brushing your teeth or washing your face, and In theater, we learned also. It was just fantastic
Yeah.
because it opened up all these new worlds. And I was like, okay, wait, there is a place for me somewhere here. And it wasn't a linear road. It's
Mm.
been winding, and sometimes it's still winding. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's perfectly okay. After my bachelor's, I did my master's from OCAD University in interdisciplinary art, media, and design. My thesis project was actually looking at the various readings, meanings, and contexts of whales.
Mm.
And the project took me to Morocco, Egypt, Pakistan. I like to select subjects, themes, and topics that also keeps me closer to home,
Huh.
that keeps me going back, that keeps the dialogue with family, friends, and community going. Um, so there was lots of travel involved. I got to interview women that wear hijabs, burqas, niqabs. There was so much nuance,
Mm.
so much diversity and richness in their perspectives once we get past the white colonial frameworks of Muslim women.
Yeah.
Um, just as a small example, I met this young girl in Karachi who wears the niqab and is studying to become a doctor,
Mm.
is
Mm.
uber educated, and the veil doesn't hold her back.
Yeah.
That's her choice and more power to her. So, yeah.
Oh, amazing. Okay, let's take another break here, and then I want to hear then more about how things continue to transpire for you.
Of course.
Welcome back to Heartistry. Today we are speaking with Mariam Magsi. And Mariam, I love it because you're like all these sort of new, I would almost say perspectives, techniques that even are opening up to you as you are going through the educational flow that you did. And again, you're kind of bringing it full circle, coming back closer into Pakistan, yes, or near and around. And so I can't help but ask this question and also hate it at the same time. So there's my disclaimer. But what were you, as as you had chosen this path through your educational journey, what were you working towards? Was there something specific, or yes, I won't even give you the other option. Just yeah.
So I think creative expression was always there because that's also the household I grew up
Yeah.
in. I saw my mother write poetry, pursue photography. When her own dad died, she was actually making collage works from archives of his photographs. So self-expression through creative means has always been a big part of it. But I think for me, it was also what is my purpose in life? Some people figure out that question really, really early, right? They know exactly what path they're taking, they know how to get there, they have all their bases covered. But like I said, for some of us, it can be a winding road. Some of us fall down a bit more, we pick ourselves right up. There's this Japanese term I gravitate toward quite a bit, which is ikigai. Finding your main purpose in life. And I think for me, photography, lens-based practices, and also other arts became my reason to wake up every morning,
Mm.
to bring that, to cultivate that discipline, to show up for that practice every single day. Farah, I firmly believe whether you and I or anyone else, if you want to wake up tomorrow and be an astronaut, who's stopping you? If you want to be a neuroscientist, a doctor, the next great engineer inventing things in the world, you can be anything you put your mind to. And I've always had that abundant, yes, I can mindset.
Mm.
Even when exterior voices were saying no, my inner voice still had to push against that and say, yes, I will, and I will show you.
Yeah.
And once we get out of our own way, the horizons are absolutely unlimited. So, finding my purpose, which is what art has given me, trying to make meaning and sense of this very complex, very difficult, um, often traumatic, but absolutely wonderful life.
Mm.
Art really helps with that as well. And it's also a way to give back to communities. So, a really big part of my practice for the last 5 to 6 years has been leading and designing workshops for seniors and BIPOC women and girls,
Huh.
whether they're from newcomer backgrounds, whether they migrated eons ago, it doesn't matter, but mostly working with people that are still facing barriers
Mm.
when it comes to accessing art, education, creative skills. And with the senior women and queer folks, especially, the work has been very rewarding because it's absolutely incredible to see someone who's never picked up a camera before now identifying as photographers.
Wow.
Uh,
Yes.
Folks that had completely retired have come into our workshops. They're now starting their own crochet businesses. People have reconciled with family members, and photography has played a really big role for them in that as well. Some of them are now on social media, advertising themselves, taking up space, being visible. And so that has
Mm.
been a truly beautiful way to give back my skills, to share what I know, to not gatekeep, to not relegate education into this high, inaccessible, world, but rather take all of that information, knowledge systems that I've inherited, that I've learned, and now also pass it on. They say, we're always looking for a seat at the table, right? I say, if we have, first of all, let's build our own tables,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But once we do have a seat at that table, please make sure that you're turning over your shoulder and extending a seat to someone else.
Ah, I I'm just beaming on the inside and outside. And I have to tell you, this conversation is so poignant. I spent my morning today at my daughter's high school. It was career day. And, they put it out there to the student parent community and asked if anybody wanted to volunteer time. And, we were talking even before we started recording. There's no shortage of like just overscheduling and all the things. But I had a moment of clarity when this request came to my email. And I said, you know what? Yes, I want to create the time because I want these young minds and hearts to see somebody like me doing what I do, not to follow literally in my footsteps or to pat me on the back, but just to see that you can create the life you want for yourself. And so much of what you said, it's not just the what you're doing, it's the how you're doing it. It's the who you're connecting with, impacting, inspiring, how they are reflecting that inspiration back to you in various ways. And so much of what you said was what I hope I was attempting to convey. And you said it so powerfully. It's so much about, the conversations we have here on this podcast. But I really, really, so much of what you said is just resonating very deeply with me. And I'm certain to anybody that is listening to this conversation, whether it's like, oh my God, yes, 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 I feel the same way, or oh wow, I'd never thought about it that way. Both are
Right,
equally
right.
important.
Of course, of course. And speaking of education, decolonizing education and setting
Yes.
up, it's so important as well. So, for our full disclosure, I was taught mostly, especially within lens-based photographic education, it's still a lot of men teaching the field.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to fields of fashion photography, editorial photography, it was predominantly all
Mm-hmm.
men, it was predominantly white men. Um, and so the great masters, as they call them, that we were introduced to were also white photographers. And now within that, there were, of course, many photographers that identify as women as well, such as Nan Golden, Sally Mann, Vivian Meyer. We were introduced to
Mm-hmm.
all their works, and I always had that question, but like, where are the BIPOC photographers? Why are we only being taught the lens-based world through this
Mm-hmm.
one
Yeah.
white frame?
Yeah.
And they're very Eurocentric Western perspectives. And the camera and photography itself also is a very colonial tool historically, right?
Right.
So when I embarked on educating others in the lens-based field, I began to do my own research because I didn't want to keep regurgitating the same names. And it's not that South Asian women photographers didn't exist. It's just that they
Hmm.
were being excluded from the mainstream canon. So, a very big name that comes to mind, who people again don't talk about that often, is Humayun Vairwala. Her pseudonym was Dalda. She was India's first woman photojournalist and press photographer.
Hmm.
This is early 1900s, and I found photographs of her in the archives where she is running from event to event in a sari, holding a massive Pioneer camera on her shoulders.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
We also have Annapurna Datta, who was born in pre-partition Bengal. She again also she used to veil her hair. She wore a sari her whole life and carried this Pioneer camera. She did all the photography for her family, but then was also hired for birthdays and weddings and events and began archiving all of these families in her
Hmm.
network. And it just left wonderful archives for us to look back on. So I think it's not that there weren't South Asian or BIPOC photographers or women photographers. It's that we don't hear their stories.
Yep.
And I think this is where Eurocentric education curriculums do a very big disservice by not having more globalized conversations within the arts. But that's where you and I and folks like us come in and create very important disruptions.
Ah, yes, yes, and yes. It's so true. To assume that there's no existence is a farce. It is absolutely, it's about bringing those stories to the forefront, to say, and as you know, Mariam, even with the work that I get to do in Pakistan, what I really try to verbalize, especially when sharing what I'm receiving so much of from that work, what I try to share here is it's not about me, actually. It's about
Mm.
me. One, first, I wrote a whole series when I first started going to Pakistan, and I think it still just really encapsulates it. It's changing perception, it's gaining perspectives, changing perceptions. And for
Okay.
me, it's like I had to open my mind to, wow, this perspective, that perspective, because again, to your point, even whether it's that Eurocentric approach, whether it's even what, and it's probably an outcome of colonization, what even will get known or not known often, say
Mm.
in Pakistan, will be like it's a very myopic view of, say, women in the arts. And let's say
Oh,
in dance,
absolutely.
right? Uh,
Especially in dance and
right?
theater. Yeah.
Yes. So then it's about broadening, gaining that perspective, and then using that now much wider, holistic perspective to
Right.
absolutely change my perception. And then, yes, I do have a responsibility to do that. And I can't always answer all the questions and be really like, you know, I might mess up the historical data a little bit, but it's like, did I tickle your curiosity? Awesome. Now you keep going with finding out, and I'll
Yeah.
be right there, right alongside you. I am not the know all here.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. And what you're doing is revolutionary with dance, especially. I interviewed Ma'am Shima Karmani in Pakistan. I had an opportunity to interview her for a magazine. We did a photo shoot of her event as well.
Awesome.
And she very boldly in the interview stated that, men see her dance as intimidating,
Yep.
right? As they're fearful of her. And that's historically also, been the case with women that have taken up space, that come into visibility. Um, we always face that pushback, that backlash. I think to rise above that, persevere, stay true to that field and that art and keep going. To me, there's nothing more resilient than that. So kudos to you also for everything that you're doing.
Oh, I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and take our final pause here. Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh, and I have been speaking in such a heartfelt, meaningful manner today with the amazing Mariam Magsi. And it's, just your your totality of who you are in this idea of, again, reflecting back, having your history, your familial history, and otherwise be a part of so much consciously, so much of who you are today, carrying that forward, pushing the boundaries when they exist. And there's just so many. And then, bringing other people into all of that. It's just something that is, it's just extremely moving. And it's such a critical aspect of what the world needs. And it's not easy to be doing this work right now, to say the least. And so I just want to talk to you a little bit about that aspect, the obstacles. Sometimes they are perceived obstacles, and it's the voices in our own head, a little bit of self-sabotage. Those are very real. Imposter syndrome. These are very real aspects, especially when one is kind of, really committing to work on themselves, and again helping others to awaken something in themselves. But what are in the in quotes work and or just life path that you are on, what are some of the obstacles that you face, that you have faced past tense? How did you get past them? And those can be literal, whether it's, funding, whether it, and anything that brings up for you.
Of course, of course. I think this path toward creativity is never one without challenge and hardship. Um, and I think it's also important to talk about the political climate of the West that we are navigating,
Yes.
whether on your side of the border or on this side of the border, because I think that's really important for us to tackle as artists as well. We are facing immense censorship. We are facing erasure of our works for doing what is the absolute role and duty of an artist, which is to speak up against fascism, which is to speak up against genocide and war and the military industrial complex. And for doing our jobs, we are actively and continuously being punished.
Yep.
Um, there's immense racism and intolerance towards South Asian communities at this time, especially in Canada. We are seeing a rise of intolerance toward temporary foreign workers,
Mm.
young kids from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh that have left so much behind to come here to deliver food and goods to doors that never opened for them for measly tips. They're living in crowded housing and dealing with all those challenges while also having to deal with the very harmful repercussions of racism, sometimes physical. Muslims also, unfortunately, there's been waves of anti-Muslim bigotry, Islamophobia, which is another reason why I work on the themes and topics that I
Mm.
work on, such as veiling, such as humanizing our communities, using art and dialogue to show nuance,
Mm.
to show that we're not a monolith,
Yeah.
that we have all of this uniqueness and richness, diversity and skill and talent, but we're consistently being painted in the same light. We're always lumped up in these undesirable categories, and we're always being told to go home by people that also at one point migrated, colonized, invaded, and settled these native
Right.
stolen lands. Um, so we're dealing with a lot, and I think for the creative community, it's important for us to reflect the times that we're living in. And I think the way it's bringing our communities together, and so many subversive, disruptive spaces are opening up as well. I know South Asian collectives that are forming. There's Muslim International Film Festivals taking place.
Mm.
So I think that is how we are pushing back. We're pushing back by resolutely taking up even more space,
Mm.
making sure that we're including our communities within that visibility and within those spaces. I think our communities are becoming stronger. Our message is becoming louder. We are becoming more assertive in our presence, and we
Mm.
are not going anywhere.
Mm. I love that. It is um, just the lessons that come during those hard times, how it can be a call in, as much as it's like a call for action, it's also a call in. And I think, there's been times, at least in my knowing, my consciousness of, hearing this term echo chamber, right? And it's
Hmm.
really gotten sort of a bad rap almost.
Right.
Like, don't stay in your echo chamber. You need to broaden, again, perspectives, opinions. And I don't disagree with the merit of the latter part. And yet it's also so important to be able to stand alongside folks that you do align with, to have that strength in numbers and philosophical alignment, emotional, humanitarian alignment. That is invaluable. I'm realizing more and more. Um, and it can also be the thing that, again, uplifts somebody who might be struggling with being in a community or part of a community that's on the periphery, that's in the sort of line of fire, if you will. So actually, this is the time to like broaden those echo chambers, if you ask me.
Absolutely, Farah. And my art and my advocacy and my activism doesn't have to look like yours, and yours doesn't have to look like mine. We each have a role to play here. Some of us are good at standing on the streets and roaring with our loud voices. Some of us are really good at hounding politicians. Some of us are really good at letter writing, petitions. Some
Yeah.
of us are really good at mobilizing crowds. Some of us are really good at offering a poem, a photograph, an artwork, documentation, a dance recital. Everyone has a role to play when we're fighting all of these political, environmental, and overwhelming factors that sometimes feel like I'm too small to tackle this. But when the collective comes together, you realize the fascists, the elitists, the rulers, they're outnumbered.
Yeah.
We're the majority.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Well, Mariam, I would love to end with a question I love to close with in all of my conversations, and that is sort of around this intention, I would say, with Heartistry. It's obviously the word heart and artistry put together. And for me, that's been about speaking with individuals, mainly artists and creatives, not exclusively so, but really individuals that I look to as really possessing a sense of passion, compassion, and commitment for whatever they're doing, income generating or not. And I'm always curious that, you've known now, of course, about the podcast for a while. So whether when you first heard about it, as we've been conversing, whether as I'm speaking about it in this moment, what, if anything, does Heartistry invoke for you?
It's such a beautiful word, artistry. And I think for me, what it evokes is with the art industry and the art scene hijacked by capitalism, by profit margins, by marketability, by algorithms. I like to take a step back and think that maybe the heart in art that we need to bring back is deep, radical, restorative care, which I often find missing from a lot of creative institutions, um, and a lot of spaces that are still being gate kept, where access is still being denied. And so I think first learning to bring that care toward ourselves as creatives and as artists, especially in a world that demands so much that we burn out and produce constantly and stay relevant and keep proving our worth, often at great personal cost. I know of so many artists within my networks, myself included, who are navigating chronic pain, long-term illness, mental health, grief, systemic exhaustion, and it doesn't have to be this way. So I've
Mm,
also been thinking a lot about what would a model for wellness for artists actually look like. Um, and the myth of the starving artist, the aching artist, I feel it's outdated, it's violent. I want
yeah.
to reject it. I want to believe that we can co-create sustainable practices where we can be thriving artists, right? So I think the heart, again, is how we can co-create these sustainable spaces and practices. Um, and rituals of making that nourish us
Mm,
and ripple outward with care, with equity, and legacy.
mm. So beautiful, all of it. And I'm sitting here just thinking about the first time we met. And again, everything you've just said is such a reflection of whether we got to have this detailed, if you will, of a conversation then. It's exactly why I felt so connected to you, even in those first moments of meeting and talking to you, and why I continue to, even though we are miles apart and have not seen each other in shared physical space in too long. But it really you are just something and somebody so special, and I'm so grateful for all that
Thank
you
you,
bring to
Farah.
this
Thank
world.
you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my perspectives. I will keep following you very closely and your work. I'm always looking at your Instagram and all the wonderful, incredible things you're doing with Nurani dance and your power pack. So keep going, more power and safety to you.
Oh, thank you, Mariam, for all of that and all of it back to you in all the ways that pertain to your amazingness. And for today, thank you for your time on Heartistry.
Thank you, Farah. Take care.